Hello, everyone. I mentioned a couple videos ago that in 2024, I won a formal rendering award from the American Society of Architectural Illustrators. As a result, I was asked to speak at the conference, and this is my presentation. It deals with artificial intelligence in large part and other issues with teaching and the future of rendering. And I also am going to post another video about their competition for this year, which is sort of exploring those ideas of artificial intelligence. So I thought, you know what, maybe I'll just record my presentation for everyone. Maybe you'll find it interesting. I will say it's been several months since I gave this presentation. This presentation was the future of visualization in the classroom. And because I'm both a professor and as I am a returning PhD student, I have some of that work in there as well. So I will say that arguably this is a grander presentation title than what it really is, but hopefully it's interesting, fun, enlivening, and starts to sort of get to these points of where the future of rendering is. So I sort of broke this down into issues with artificial intelligence. So there's copyright issues I want to talk about. There's thinking versus time, which is a big issue with students. And then my big one with artificial intelligence is it tends to be boring if you're not careful anyway. And then what are the solutions? Be smarter than AI, and art will never go away. So moving forward, we'll talk about copyright first. But actually, I start each section with a set of cartoons. I know I've posted a couple videos on this channel, but I have a cartooning channel called Pleasant Valley Tomorrow. If you want to check out some of those videos there, you can see where some of these images come from. So I just use them as fun transitions. And this cartoon, I don't want to I shouldn't really be telling the joke, but this is only a piece of the cartoon, these three images, but it was sort of to start talking about what does copyright mean in the world of artificial intelligence. So in this case, the robot is the author. That's a stand-in for artificial intelligence, and it's being rejected, which is, as far as I understand, the current law. But of course, that's not the real issue with copyright that people have. The real issue is that it samples a bunch of people's work. And so it might use some people's work in its own. And that's a big thing. Like if it's using my work, I'm not getting paid for it. Yet these companies might be making money off the software. So isn't that a copyright issue? And I think it is. And I'm not a lawyer and I don't know how these things will play out. But I thought as a fun experiment, what I would do is let's see if it copies my work. So I said, you can see the top of the screen, create an architectural rendering in the style of Michael Tweed. And this is what it looks like. It's fine rendering. I think it's somewhat fairly generic. And so it's not too impressive to me. Do I think it's exactly like my work? No, not really. I did pick a couple renderings that I'm sure I have videos on this channel. The ones on the right are renderings that I've done that might pull from this. As you guys know, I really like texture. I like exploring non-photoreal issues. And actually, the text when it told me this, it did sort of tell me that I do, like Michael Tweed does a lot of non-photoreal work and things of that nature. So does it have some of these qualities in this image? Maybe some of the lighting quality, the texture quality, even the compositionally with the composition of trees and things. Yeah, it might be a stretch. I think it's there, but it's certainly a stretch. Because certainly I'm not proliferated as an architectural illustrator across the internet. So it's pulling from many other architects, many other illustrators when composing the rendering here on the left. And I think those are over influencing the work that might be pulling directly from me. But nonetheless, it's sort of new. The words were correct. When it described the image, it described the way I work. I would say it's still not as good as me yet, although well, we'll get to time when we get to time, because obviously that's a big thing. I thought possibly some of the work I did professionally as an urban designer, particularly with Roberts, and Todd, might be more published. So I instead of using myself, I just use that rendering here. So create a rendering of a new neighborhood in a city in the style of Robert Wallace and Todd, or WRT. And so these are from the Civic Vision drawings that I worked with a bunch of people, but I led the drawings in large part for this project back, wow, probably close to 20 years ago now. So the drawings are feeling a little outdated, I would argue. They were really good, I think, with the technology at the time, but I just wanted to see what happened. And again, I do think like you can see similarities between there. And so I found that interesting. I mean, personally, as an educator, that's where I spend my career. I do these competitions and things more for pushing my skills for fun, and obviously it can get there's certain benefits to it, but I don't really do architectural renderings to make money off of them. So I sort of have an interesting perspective when it comes to copyright because on one hand, I understand the monetary issues. On the other hand, through AI, like these are my ideas can live beyond me. Like this artificial intelligence and the internet, my drawings are on there, and short of complete collapse of Earth, they will always be part of the internet. They're now a part of ChatGPT and arguably all artificial intelligence. And they will, if someone wants an architectural rendering, my work will be part of the work that it's incorporated in there. And the ideas I present will in some ways carry on beyond me, which I find really fascinating. And that wouldn't happen, if we said, nope, you can't, artificial intelligence can't train on anything. So I'm sort of two positions in that. And I don't know how it's going to work out. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how it's going to work out in the long term. I do think copyright's an issue, but I also think it's also fascinating that it could be taking from all this work. So we'll see how that plays out. And you may or may not agree with me, and I'm sure you have your own opinions. If you would like to comment, go ahead and do so. Um, the another thing that I want to talk about as an issue was time in artificial intelligence, which I think could be an issue. So this was actually a cartoon I made based off my channel because my students know I have this cartooning channel. And so last year they asked if I could make a cartoon for outgoing seniors, and I put it on a mug for them. So I took this robot, good thing I don't need to sleep because of course architecture, you're always wishing you could sleep more. But I do think like students in particular in time is always a big issue. And I think what we find is most technology, I don't think saves time. It makes things better, but not usually saving time. And if it is saving time, it probably means your work is ultimately less good. And so I just drew this quick sketch um, when I was preparing this presentation. I just photographed it and put it in, which is looking at how much time something takes versus how much control and creativity there is. And so I first sort of drew this top curve here. Artificial intelligence is here super quick, and that's what's amazing about it. Which if I lack control over a lot of the things. Even if I go through several rounds of input on the text, it's still only giving me what it wants to give me, not necessarily what I want. And that's opposed to drawing something by hand. It takes a long time, but I can make it be exactly the way I want it to be. Or CAD or I put CAD here, but it could be any computer software, 3D modeling. It might take about the same amount of time. Perhaps I said there's more control and creativity over it. I'm just thinking you have some extra tools, particularly, think of some advanced 3D modeling tools or something that this is very difficult to do by hand, but they're very close. That's the point. And being a digital renderer, I did want to give a slight edge to the computer stuff, so I put it to the right, but think of them as largely the same. I do find handwork to be quite valuable. So that's the opposite extreme of this. And so to do the kind of work I want to do, really, like in the work we just saw, I have to do it. Artificial intelligence can't do as good of work as I can do yet, anyway. And I don't know if it ever can. It certainly, maybe it can do as good of a work as I can, but maybe not with the exact control I want. So we're sort of at the point where you have to make that choice. I did in the end throw in really, really quickly. I did throw in sketching. I realized, hey, what's a quick way that you have a lot of control is sketching in the process. I'm always high value sketching. So I threw that down there. And then after I made the PowerPoint, I did put in Revit, which is super time consuming. I don't want to go into details. I'm not a huge fan of Revit for renderings and design process. I think it's great for construction documents, but that's not what my channel focuses on. Can AI be used in renderings? I think it can, but will it save time? I don't know. Can it be used in any part in education? I think it can, but will it save time? I don't think so. It'll just make the quality of your work better. So I want to mention that. I did in another video, whether it comes out before this one or after this one, I did talk about how I investigated some hairy skyscrapers. Again, I did this because it was quick. It was part of my PhD studies. But watch the other video for looking at that. And I just threw with this. And part of this presentation was just a look at my body of work as well. So this is a drawing from a long time ago, which is all Photoshop composite, which takes a long time, but I have a lot of control over it, arguably more control than even a photoreal rendering engine, which, of course, at the time that this was made, were much slower and took longer, which is one reason why we didn't use that method then. But you might use a photo real rendering engine today. But nonetheless, I still think, even though there's lots of things I would change in this at this point in time, there's some more control over those computer softwares, even though it's all digital. But take control of your drawings. That's the big point, even if it means going a little slower. I will say that I do find a lot of artificial intelligence to be boring. That's not just in drawing, that's also in the writing. When it writes so generically, and that's what I'm really concerned about. When we need to, if everyone just starts like, oh, it's so easy to use AI to do a something written, it's so easy to use AI to make a rendering or a drawing or what other AI will influence in the future. It does it so generically, and I'd hate to lose that. So my biggest concern is that it's boring. Um, and so again, this is just from a long time ago. This is from my thesis and undergraduate work. At the time, I was already exploring non-photoreal rendering styles long before. I don't even think like the term non-photoreal was even really well set in lexicon at that point in time. Most people were just beginning to explore photoreal renderings, but I already knew then, like, you push a button, it comes out photoreal. It looks sort of the same. Like, and I know there's issues of composition and color contrast and the design of the building and all of those things. Those things do matter, but take all those things out, the photoreal rendering engine makes it look all the same. But if I put a colored pencil in a student's hand and gave them the exact same drawing and the same colored pencils, it would look different student by student. And I think it's that interest that you can get and sort of along with the textural qualities and so on and so forth. So I actually modeled this in Form Z a long time ago and then used textures in Photoshop to sort of get this effect. And I was playing with them. Would I do a lot better with the rendering style today? Yes, I would. Would I do a lot better with, I think, some of the design intents of this today? Yes, I would. But I just want to point out, like, from even a long time ago, I was exploring these issues. And I didn't want to just like talk about myself in this presentation. So I do have some student work in here and with the attributes sort of at the top of each page. So these students actually submitted to the student competition and they won one of the awards as well. But again, they took digital work. This is all digital, obviously 3D modeled, but they controlled it themselves and made something interesting that was in theme and storytelling with themselves. Again, I know I've sort of done various techniques. If you want to see how to do trees and watercolor-like style like this, I have videos on this channel on how to do this. And this is a project I've done in school where I call it they have to sort of fake a famous architectural rendering by hand. They have to do it with the same media. The left-hand side's actually watercolored by the same student, and the right hand is now replicated digitally. Figure out how to control the software to make it look the way you want. In this case, I have them copy a drawing because they're young. They don't know how to make it how they want. This lesson teaches them, though, that they can make it look however they want to, that they don't have to be satisfied with the generic output of software. And it's not that hard to learn that control. So that's what this science does. Sort of moving into some solutions to this is sort of be smarter than artificial intelligence. And yes, this is meant to be a joke. Again, this is on my other channel. So again, this is going back to my work. Why I say be smarter than this? Because it's just what gets into the same aspects. There's very little to no photoreal rendering in here. The trees are an Illustrator file. I think I have a video on how to do the trunks, for example. It's just a line. This tree here is a single line. It just has Illustrator effects and then manipulated in Photoshop. The wood texture is all made through Illustrator and Photoshop, etc. The wood stone here, same. So it's like I can be smarter than computer. I tell students all the time, you are smarter than computer. I've said this for a long time, but even with artificial intelligence, they are still smarter than it. Artificial intelligence is amazing. I think it sort of goes back to that control. You can think more creatively than artificial intelligence, and you can make it do whatever you want if you're willing to take that control. So this is the time. Stand out from artificial intelligence by taking that control and being smarter than it. sort of with some student work here. This one was sort of rendered digitally. Obviously, there's some rendering engines out there now that are doing things that are non-photoreal built in. Again, is it as good as a student could do if they took control? No. I mean, I like this drawing. I like this design. I like the cutaway section perspective. There's lots of compositional things that make this a good drawing. What I don't like about it was that it was just sort of using a quick solution to have an architectural style. Look at, there's really nothing pulling the building out specifically, the generic background versus the foreground, like as a super high quality drawing, it's not there, even though it used some artificial intelligence as a part of it. That's opposed to say this drawing, which on its surface might not be as good of a drawing as the previous one, but what I like about it was the student tried to take control and they did a lot of interesting things with it. And actually, there's only a small amount of artificial intelligence here, and it's where they were needed. Like it was like, I need this specific fisherman down here, or a set of whales sort of swimming to get into this aquarium and things of that nature, where the rest of it is modeled and then it's photo engine uh, and then Photoshop work on top of it. And it's like using it for strategic reasons. And that's what I liked about the use of artificial intelligence there. I have this another assignment without getting into too much details where I have students pick an instrument because we're going to do a building for a school that teaches that instrument. Every student picks a different instrument. They start the semester by researching it and they have to create a series of largely abstract graphics about that instrument, what it looks like, how it sounds, how it's made, et cetera, et cetera. They have to use different media across those five. I allow AI to be used. In fact, the first time I allowed AI to be, just a couple of years ago, it was one of the best classes I ever had. People were trying it for the first time. We were all experimenting, having a ton of fun. But one of the interesting things that comes out, usually out of the five, the artificial intelligence is their least favorite. And that's because, again, you could argue that maybe graphically it might be more interesting than some of the other work they submitted. And so I have a couple here that I think that's the case. But what they found is like, no, it's not coming out the way they want to. It's not expressing exactly what they want to. And they find they need to take the time to do it themselves. And they like theirs better, even if the overall sort of graphic quality might not be as the artificial intelligence. And even though it took longer, it's still saying what they want to say, meaning they are smarter than the AI themselves. And I think that's important. I will say for this assignment in particular, a lot of times students find it very useful to use AI as inspiration or brainstorming. So they might use a couple of runs of AI, get an idea of something, but then make it themselves to really control the drawing the way they want to do. So again, take control for yourself. And the last thing set of this presentation is that one of the things about AI, it might be different professionally, but I don't think art will ever go away. And when I was making this presentation, I was sort of thinking about similar things. So I asked the question in the conference, who is the fastest person alive? And pretty much the result you're going to get is Usain Bolt, who has run the 100-meter world record the fastest, right? Of course, they are not the fastest person alive. The fastest people to ever travel are actually the Apollo 10 astronauts on their way to the moon. But we don't count it because it's a machine. We still do the Olympics. We still watch football and all of these things that are people. Even though we can go faster in machines, we can hit harder with machines and in all of these sorts of things, we still appreciate a human doing those things in sports, for example. I think the same will be true with art, even though machines might be able to do art and they're becoming more and more have the ability to quote unquote do art. Humans will still want to see other people's art. And I think that will have value. So again, just sort of summing it up with some work, this sort of gets to control. I have a video on this drawing from several years ago, but it's all using code that I coded in to get lines. It's a work unfinished, but I don't want to spend too much time, so I won't go into it. I have videos on this one as well. So which was really just trying to use a bunch of my techniques together, which I think I have in other videos, but since it's in this presentation, I'll just go through it really quickly. I use Illustrator vector work all over the place, things like trees. I use computer scripts to do some of the texturing that we've seen from other drawings. A very little there is very little SketchUp in here. I did model this in SketchUp and stuff just to get a sense of perspective, shadow lines, how the reflection would look. Although it was all largely redone in Photoshop. Most of it is all just collage from those sources, particularly Photoshop, and sort of put all together. Of course, what I have not used here is artificial intelligence. Anyway, I'm going to finish with this thank you. It happened to be that I was presenting on Halloween, so that's why I threw in the Halloween one, but out of context, that doesn't make sense. So maybe you appreciate this video, maybe not, but I'll see you in the next one.